So let's thank the spirit of the sound choir once again in Seattle Unity. Thank you. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and he saw that it was good, and he called it good. And God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. We are made in that image and likeness of God. We are perfect, and we were born this way. Every single one of us here today is unique. You get that? You are unique. There will never be another you on this planet, ever. You are irreplaceable. And I think that's one of the reasons why, it hurts so much when one of us dies, when one of us leaves this planet, because we know there will never be another person, another human being like we are. You are made in the image and likeness of God. You are sons and daughters of the Most High. And so today, as we look at the dream, we're talking about the dream of you and me, the dream of community, the dream of all of us, the dream of humans. And what are we doing on this planet? The dream of plants and animals and all of life that is here. And what is our place in it? We come from this divine realm. We come from this spiritual realm, and we're spiritual beings, and we're living in a human body. And when we get here, we seem to forget what our true nature is. We forget what our true identity is, yeah? There's an ancient Jewish parable that says that before we're born, when we are in heaven, when we are one with everything, we gather all the information in the universe. We gather all wisdom. We gather all knowledge. We gather all love. We know the teachings backwards and forwards. And we spend all this time gathering these incredible resources. And then right when we're about to be born, the story goes, an angel appears and says, okay, so do you have everything now? Absolutely. All right. And then she puts her finger right over our lip, and she says, shh, now, you must forget. And it is said that that is why we have this indentation over our lip. It was the angel who sealed our lips before we were born so that we would forget who we are. We forget this divine realm from which we came. And it seems like sometimes the longer that we're here, the more real this all seems. Not that it's not real, it is real, but it's real with a little r because it's always changing. And we forget that we came from another place, and that's why spiritual practice is such an important part of our lives, because it takes us back to that center. It takes us back to who we are and where we are. When my son was about 2 years old, I was watching the forgetting process of the miracle of life, and I actually had the video camera on, and I was interviewing, or talking to him anyway, and I was asking him just random questions, and I thought, well, what the heck? So I said, so, Jordan, do you remember being born? And he said, yeah. And I said, oh, and I said, when you were born, you were really mad. You were so angry when you were born. I said, why was that? And he said, well, it was because I had this icky stuff in my mouth, and it was just, ah. And I actually have this on video. I have to go find it. But when he was born, he was covered in meconium. So that in his mouth was real. And in that moment, he was describing and he was remembering his birth. He was remembering coming from that divine realm and entering into his physical body. When I was at the birth of a girlfriend's child, I watched as he was born, and I watched him take his first breath, and he seemed to just become fully animated and filled with the prana, filled with the life source. I remember when I was 2 or 3 years old, one of my very first memories is of that whole spiritual realm. And when I was a kid, my parents would put my brother and I in the yard and just, put us in the yard, and we'd run around, and there were gates so we couldn't get out. But I remember very clearly being 2 or 3 years old and standing in the gangway between the two buildings. And it was cold, and so I was dressed warmly, and I was watching my breath, the cold air. I was watching my breath going in and out of my body. And then it came to me that I wondered, what is breath? What is breath? And so then I became extremely aware of the fact that I was breathing, which started to drive me crazy, because then I started, and then I thought, okay, I'm breathing. And then I thought, wait a minute, what's breathing? Who's breathing me? What's breathing? And then I thought, wait a minute, I'm in this thing and I want to get out. And I remember very clearly trying to jump out of my body and just trying to get out, and I realized I couldn't get out. And so I was pulling on my face, and there was this moment of feeling trapped and sad, like, wait a minute, I can't get out of here. I am here in this body. I am here in this place. And this is our story, isn't it? We come from this vast, eternal, divine realm of love and spirit and truth, and then we enter into this dense material realm. We enter into this physical body, and then we forget. And we begin to believe that we're separate. We begin to believe that I end right here with this physical body, and the truth is, we don't. We are co-creators of God. We are, in the way that we are made in the image and likeness of God, we also have that ability to use our imagination. At our very core, we are spiritual beings. In unity, we call it the Christ, which is not to say Jesus Christ, but it's that spirit of perfection and that spirit of goodness that indwells all beings. And that's why we say there is only one presence and one power in the universe, God, the good omnipotence, because we are born good. We are born this way. We are born in the image and likeness of God. We are precious. And as co-creators of God, we have the ability to dream and to bring our dreams into manifestation through our thoughts, through our words, and through our actions. And I think that in order to dream, in order to imagine, it's imperative that we learn to listen to our inner voice. It's imperative that we learn to listen to our bodies and to our intuition, and not so much listen to the outer voices, but to listen to what your inner voice is telling you. And the only way we can touch on that, it really is to be quiet, is to go out in nature. Perhaps it's through music, perhaps it's through dance or running or exercise, or there's a million ways that we can touch into that spirit. But we learn to listen to that voice. And I recognize that there are some organizations and there are some religions where it is sort of laid out for us what we can and can't do, the dogma. And the truth is that I think that as we deepen in our teachings, we don't need to know, we don't need the 10 commandments that are in the Bible, because the 10 commandments are inside of us, right? I mean, they become a part of who we are. Thou shalt not steal. Well, of course not. But until we get to that place of course not, perhaps we need it as a guideline. And so I believe that there is a path for everybody. In unity, in New Thought, in religious science, it's about seeing colors and gray areas as well, instead of living in a black and white environment and in a black and white world. One of my favorite movies, I'm sure I have seen it probably at least 10 times, if not more, is Pleasantville. And Pleasantville's about these two teenage kids who end up in a TV show from the 50s in black and white, and the whole world is in black and white, and they're in black and white. And what they discover is that because they're there, they're changing their universe, and as they're changing, people go from black and white to being in color, and they don't know exactly how it happens, but it starts popping up all over town. And one of my favorite scenes is Betty and George Parker, and Betty has changed color. She is in living color. George is still in black and white. He still sees the world in black and white. And they're going to a meeting to discuss how to stop people from turning colors. And Betty says to George, she says, "George, look at me, look at my face. This meeting is not for me." And George says, "Well, you'll just put on some makeup." And Betty says, "I don't want to put on any makeup." And George says, "It'll go away. It goes away." And she looks at him very clearly and firmly, and she says, "I don't want it to go away." And isn't that how it is with our awakenings, with our ahas, with our intuition? We don't want it to go away. We don't want to go back to living in a black and white environment, in a black and white world, because the colors are so rich and so deep. One of the challenges with being in unity, with being in New Thought, is that yes, there's a lot of freedom because there's not a lot of dogma, really. I mean, there's not a lot of do's and don'ts that you cannot be or do. But there is a lot of self-responsibility. And so there is no devil to blame. There's no Satan to blame to say, that's why this is happening to me. Rather, there's this looking within. So with freedom comes responsibility. And I recognize that, again, that for different times in our growth, we need all the paths. So I'm not saying one path is right and one path is wrong. I think all paths are needed, because if we don't have the 10 Commandments within us, if we don't have the teachings of Jesus or Buddha within us already, then we need those teachings. We need them on a building or in a book to show us the way. But when we grasp them and live them, then we can let go of that and not listen to whatever the dogma or whatever the rules or whatever is being put out there for us, because we need to find that voice within ourselves. One of the things about being a human is that we have the ability to put ourselves in other people's places and see experiences from their eyes. We also have the ability to put ourselves into other species' eyes and see what's happening for them. And recently, I watched a documentary about Temple Grandin. Anybody know who she is? It's quite an amazing story. She was diagnosed with autism when she was a child, and this is in the 50s, so they're like, well, you need to put her in an institution, which her mother said, absolutely not. She didn't learn to speak until she was 4 years old. And she thought in pictures, and she saw patterns and things that we don't see. So for instance, if I say the word shoe to you, we probably all have like a general idea of what a shoe is. But if you were to say shoe to her, she would literally flip through thousands of pictures of shoes that she's seen, whether it be her shoes or her mother's shoes or in the store and magazines, and she would start to see all the different kinds of shoes. You say door to her. We get the general idea of door, but she saw specific doors. So she saw things that we didn't see, and her social skills weren't so great necessarily. She had to learn those. And by society, she may have been deemed different or retarded. And what she said was, I am different, but not less. She had a science teacher when she was in high school who really believed in her and saw her gift for who she was, and sparked the fire of learning in her and of knowledge. And so she went on to graduate high school, college, master's degree, PhD, and she ended up specializing in animal husbandry, of all things, and working in the stockyards and studying the cattle. And she was very disturbed because she could hear things that we can't hear. She was very disturbed by the cows mooing in distress. And of course they would make fun of her, like, oh, you're all upset about the cows mooing. And she wanted to study what was happening to them because she watched a pattern in how they walked. They always walked in circles. And she even got down on all fours and walked through the pens to see what they were seeing and to experience, to a degree, what they were experiencing. And what she ended up doing was noticing the patterns and seeing how they were. And she said that she ended up designing a new system. Now, granted, it's a horrible thing to think about, and yet we eat meat. It's a part of our culture. And what she has done is she used what was different about her to make life better for cattle. She set up a system in which they are treated more humanely because she was able to step outside of herself and she was able to see things that the rest of us couldn't see. So the truth is that every single one of us has a gift. Every single one of us is unique. Every single voice, every single thought is needed collectively. It's like all the different voices in the choir. All of our voices are needed. All of our voices need to be heard. Richard Bach used to say, how do you know if your mission on earth isn't complete? And he said, if you're still alive, you know it isn't. And sometimes you may wonder, hey, how do I know if I'm in my right place and I'm in my right work or if I'm with the right people? And the truth is, if you're here, you are. So humor me for a moment. I'd invite you just to stand up. So when you ask the question, where am I supposed to be? And what am I supposed to be doing? Just stop for a minute and look down at your feet. And the truth is, this is where you're supposed to be. Right here, right now, in this moment. And whenever you doubt where you're supposed to be or what you're supposed to be doing, stop and look at your feet. It's a simple thing, but there's some heavy truths in that. Thank you. You can sit down. We are created in the image and likeness of God. There will never be another like you. You are irreplaceable. You are irreplaceable and you are precious. And we come from that divine realm, and just before we're born, an angel pops up and puts her finger on our lips and we seem to forget. But when you're thinking, notice how you kind of go like this, trying to remember all that wisdom that was given to us. We are called to use our imaginations as co-creators with God. And it is our imaginations that give us the ability to dream, but we cannot dream. We cannot use our imaginations unless we can hear our own inner promptings, our own inner voice. So whatever that is for you, whether it's nature or silence or meditation or walking or whatever, listen to that inner voice and follow it. It's an opportunity to live and move from a world that is black and white to a world that is rich in color. You are a child of God. You were born this way.